Welcome to this special in the series, the partnership between IdeaSpies and the Centre for Optimism, Wellbeing, COVID-19 and Optimism. The conversation is led by the IdeaSpies Wellbeing editor, Maddie Cunningham, with its founder, Lynn, the chair of the Centre for Optimism, Robert Masters, and special guests, Michael Kasumovic, Lisa Butler, Bradley Delamere, and I'm yours, Victor Perton. So, Victor Perton here, and it's welcome to the third in this wonderful series of conversations between the Centre for Optimism and IdeaSpies. The first one was on governance and improving governance. The second one was on optimism and advanced manufacturing. And as you know, manufacturing's time has come again. We thought it had gone in Australia. And this one is going to be an absolutely fantastic conversation on well-being. And it's going to be led by Maddie Cunningham, who is the well-being editor at IdeaSpies, Lynn, who is the founder of IdeaSpies, our chairman, Rob Masters, and our special guests, Lisa Butler, author and entrepreneur, Michael, who I think just plays games really, but a professor at UNSW that seems to be in the papers all the time, and Brad Delamere, who is absolutely at the cutting edge of e-health and well-being via electronics. So, hi Maddie.
Hi there, Victor. Thank you.
Hi Rob.
Victor.
Hi Lynn.
Hello.
Hi Michael.
Hello, hello.
Hi Brad.
Hello.
Hi Lisa.
Hello.
So the first question in every one of our series is what makes you optimistic? And in this time of pandemic, we say what's getting you through the pandemic and beyond. So Maddie Cunningham, what makes you optimistic through the pandemic and beyond?
What makes me optimistic is always looking for something positive in every situation, no matter how bad an experience, you know, we will get through this.
And Lynn Wood, what makes you optimistic?
Being an idea spy makes me very optimistic because I've been trained and I've trained myself to look out for very clever and positive ideas around the world. And I love it. I escape into IdeaSpies.
And Robert Masters, what makes you optimistic through the pandemic and beyond?
Well, I'm a golfer, so I would like to say getting back onto the golf course and playing a better game, but more so with science and where science is going with the pandemic and what they're doing as far as their research. I'm convinced that science is the answer. So
I saw a wonderful article the other day, Robert, that said something that made someone optimistic was there are 7 billion people worried about the virus. So in that, there must be 100 million people, smart people who can find a solution.
Exactly. And Australian scientists are at the forefront, so it's good to see.
Lisa Butler, what makes you optimistic? What carries you through the pandemic and beyond?
Oh, I think all of those things, not so much about the golf, but everything else I agree with. But I think the other thing is just being around optimistic people and connecting with people and just keeping those relationships going. I think that definitely makes me optimistic, and, you know, being able to bounce ideas off it, you know, which relates to what you were talking about, Lynn, but the ideas and the creativity that's coming from this as well. I find that really optimistic.
When I asked Bill George, you know, the guru who wrote True North, and I said, what makes you optimistic? He said, it's being surrounded by optimistic and positive people. Yeah. So the great guru, you've nailed the same point that the great gurus make, Lisa.
Stole it from me.
Michael, what makes you optimistic through the pandemic and beyond?
Well, just seeing how people respond so well and how quickly we've been able to make changes that are necessary for people to keep doing what they need to, especially in schools. Like, I'm really optimistic with how teachers have responded so well and how kids are still able to learn in a time where they can't really interact with one another. So that's been amazing.
Yeah, amazing. And Brad Delamere, what makes you optimistic through the pandemic and beyond?
Well, there's actually two things. One is, which I think a lot of people lose perspective on, is I've got my health and I feel fit and healthy. So that makes me feel optimistic, especially with what's going on at the moment. And the second one is working in the innovation space. Every situation like this leads to opportunities. So there's plenty of opportunities out there to take advantage of. So that's what keeps me going every day and optimistic.
Oh, absolutely brilliant. Well, Lynn, you're the founder of IdeaSpies, and a guru of spreading ideas of innovation and extracting the ideas of innovation from people. And you've just written a really passionate article about turning down the news and doing more stuff like this. Do you want to share that with our audience?
Well, thank you very much. I was actually inspired to write it by holding this webinar, because I just started thinking about some of the issues and why I started IdeaSpies in 2016. And the reason I started it, because everybody says, what's the problem you're solving when you're in innovation? I'm sure Brad knows that very clearly. Everybody else does as well. And I was saying, I'm solving the problem of negative news. And nobody understood what I was talking about. I've since, when writing this article, and thanks for the encouragement, Victor, I researched some news around negative news. And it turns out that Medical News Today said that in 2016, when I started IdeaSpies, that was the year that negative news became more profound. It always been negative because our brains are trained, from the start, to put 10 times more emphasis on negative news than positive news. But in 2016, it really got worse. Anyway, people weren't noticing it. But now I can clearly say that IdeaSpies is really attempting to address the issue of negative news, because it has become more and more and more negative since 2016 when I started. And that's why it's wonderful to be part of this this webinar today, because there are so many positive things happening in the world, and it's IdeaSpies is showcasing it. And I know that we're actually also sharing some of the ideas as a panelist here, which we can talk more about a little bit later. But there are so many of these really good ideas that have not been getting the airtime they deserve, and they show a very positive future. And more people should know about it, because when we know about this more positive future, we can have more confidence in the future, our kids can have more confidence, and there'll be more investment in the future, which we radically need now. The top idea on IdeaSpies that's going out this week, we've got IdeaSpies Weekly that goes out, is that the COVID-19 is the great accelerator. And that's really positive as well, because it's making us change. Because what stops innovation is people don't like change. But it's just, hello, like I now can't go to the coffee shop, which I do every single day, and sit down. I always love sitting down at a coffee shop. Straight change. I have to make coffee at home. All of it. That was a very small example of how we have to change, but that's what is creating the COVID-19, though very negative, is creating a great accelerator for change. And we're all very fortunate to live in Australia, because our government's made very good decisions, which I'm also publicising, because I'm very interested in politics, so that we can get out of this faster than many other countries. And that will be a big opportunity for us. Thank you.
The Brookings Institution today declared the 4 countries that have done best in hitting the virus and the economy: Australia, New Zealand, Germany, and Denmark. So right up there to everyone in Australia. Well, Maddie, you've had a stellar global career. You've worked in some fantastic global institutions in HR. You've come back to Australia to raise a family. You're now taking on the role of Wellbeing editor at IdeaSpies. So tell us about Wellbeing, IdeaSpies, and what Wellbeing is going to do on IdeaSpies, and what IdeaSpies is going to do for Wellbeing.
Awesome. Thanks, Victor. Well, I'm very fortunate to have the role of Wellbeing editor for IdeaSpies, because I have the benefit of showcasing so many clever ideas and innovations across industry and business. And I guess that relationship with Lynn really started some 2 years ago when I was working for a management consulting firm, Trans-Tasman Business Circle, where I set up a startup platform called Next Circle, which was for C-level executives who had decided to move from their senior roles into a portfolio career. And that community was about sharing ideas, inspiring action, giving back to the wider community. And in early 2019, I had the pleasure of meeting Lynn at one of my briefings held at Accenture's offices. And it was on navigating the digital world with Paul Smith, the technology editor of the Australian Financial Review. And from that point, Lynn and I developed a wonderful working as well as personal relationship. And so when the startup came to an abrupt end with COVID, with unable to be delivering face-to-face engagement briefings, I joined up with Lynn as the Wellbeing editor, which has given me the opportunity to continue connecting with people from across all those industries to showcase and spotlight, all their ideas and innovations, which has been absolutely fantastic for me. I love everything across science, technology, education and learning, my background. So today, what I'd like to be able to showcase is really the IdeaSpies platform and wellbeing. Even though wellbeing, we have all the other interest areas across governance or healthcare. You can see up here, Victor's now sharing the screen. We have special editors that will post ideas on agriculture, dining, disability. The topic of wellbeing also interweaves across all those areas. So again, I'm able to continue developing wonderful relationships and partnerships in this new role with Lynn. So I thought where we could start off today was focusing on education and learning. And I think we can all agree, and we've already touched on this a little bit before, with dealing with wellbeing during the current pandemic, education and learning and technology has really been disrupted and really hit us right in the face right now. So I think, when I look at the article that Lynn put together on the media diet and focusing, not to focus on negative news, one of the great ideas that has come up is there's a news podcast for children called Squiz Kids. And that's been specifically designed for them. I don't know if you're able to find that. But in any rate, this program is for children. It's the podcast is streamed live at 7 a.m. Each day, and for easy to digest information for 8 to 12-year-olds. And it's about decreasing the anxiety and stress related with everyday news. And I think that's very important for well-being. I know it's also a popular podcast for adults who do not want to be bombarded with negative news. So I thought I'd put that out there. I thought that that got launched in January of this year prior to COVID. And I know that's been very popular across the education and learning area. Another one, I think, everyone would agree with maintaining wellness and decreasing anxiety has been the huge emphasis on focusing on maintaining co-curricular activities and music and keeping the body engaged. As a mother of 3 teenage boys, I know the unprecedented pressures that they're undergoing, and they've had to grow up a lot more faster and may not have I guess the awareness to keep up with the pace and pressure. So one thing that I can say is my sons, as many of your own children would be fortunate to be involved in co-curricular, has been able to manage their level of possible mental health issues by reducing the possibility of them obtaining depression and anxiety. So, by getting involved in co-curricular activities, it will increase their mental resilience. So, increasing self-esteem, getting involved in sport. I've been really drumming home to my children, even though they're connected. I was saying earlier before we went live, they're on live from 8 a.m. to 3:30. My older sons are, continuing doing assessments. They're working on the weekend. Not only do we, as grown-ups and working in the workforce, they also have virtual exhaustion, and really drumming to them to continue with their co-curricular activities, even though they don't have their normal community sports. It's important for them to still get involved. They can still get involved and continue on with the Duke of Edinburgh. They can do chess. They can get involved in debating. Everyone has gone online like we are now, and it's wonderful. Like Victor, you mentioned earlier, one of your children's doing the choir online. I know they're running music classes through the Conservatorium of Music. I've got friends in the arts and culture where they're running drama classes. It's a really wonderful way to release the pressure, give a different way of focusing. It enhances their education and learning, and increases their self-esteem and confidence when they haven't had the face-to-face contact. That, for my own children, I'll be very open. My husband came back from America in early March, and he wasn't feeling unwell. He wasn't feeling well, and after 2 days, we found out he had COVID-19. So my family, we've actually been in lockdown since the beginning of March. And my children, who thought it was interesting and fun to do distance learning, let me tell you, by week 3, and which was the end of term 1 for them, and they had pretty much studied 18 days straight, they are desperate to get back to school. They're desperate to get back to normal life, and obviously we all are. So, to me, co-curricular, all of us, it's really important to activate the brain, do constant movement. It's good for our nervous system. It relaxes our body. It's great for just general skills development, improving social skills. We can still do that while we're online, and just for our overall, well-being, health and well-being. So I'd like to now introduce Michael. Michael's absolutely fantastic. He's the Associate Professor at UNSW. He's also the founder of arludo, and he has developed this amazing science program, STEM education program for all ages across all socioeconomic levels. It has a favourite place in my heart. I love science. I've got a background in science. So over to you, Michael.
Oh, thank you so much for the kind words, Maddie. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be here. And everything that you've said, I think hits it right on the head. Is I've got 2 kids at home as well right now, and they're doing really, really well learning from home, because the teachers have taken a lot of care in creating a curriculum for them, but they so want to see their friends so badly. And that's not very surprising. So, my name is Michael. I'm an associate professor, and I have this company that I started a while back called arludo. And in this company, what we do is we create educational games that help teachers to let students experience science. So it's a little bit different than what we normally do in schools and in classrooms. We focus on using mobile apps and games to get kids actually involved in learning and doing science. And I think we can kind of all agree that COVID, like Maddie said really well, has kind of changed everything. And it's changed this kind of classroom experience where kids are involved together, working together, solving problems, socially interacting, which is so very important for them, because they learn so much from one another, right? That instead now they're learning home, and I think every single one of us are afraid that our kids are going to start looking like this, where they're sitting on couches and sofas, just kind of absorbing information from the internet. And that's kind of where we come in, and what we've always tried to do. Like I've mentioned, we've tried to give kids meaningful digital interactions. And what I mean by that is we actually make students into scientists. So our apps and games, which I'll show you in a little bit, actually get kids doing things and playing a game, understanding concepts through that game, and then also collecting scientific data. And that's kind of the key aspect of what we're actually doing, is as the students are playing, they're unknowingly collecting data. And then what we do is we take that and we compile it and make graphs for them to simplify that beginning of science, that hardest part of science, that doing part. And we let them focus on the thinking and the analyzing and trying to understand what they're doing. So I want to just give you a little bit of an understanding of what I mean. And so here is my iPhone here that has a bunch of apps here. I'll just get this little button going real quick. So these are all our apps here. So hopefully you can see me that way. And I'm gonna just open one called Xenon Crow. And what this game uses the accelerometer. And I'll try and play as I'm actually doing this, which is gonna be a little bit difficult, but this is kind of the fun part. So now in this game, students are predators. And they have to look around and try and find different prey items. So one will appear in a little bit. I'll just keep moving this slowly. And what the idea here is that we're teaching kids is that being a predator is hard. They're experiencing what it's like to be a predator. But the key thing is that every kid, doesn't matter where they are in the world, they're experiencing the same kind of thing. And that kind of creates a social bond between kids, because now they have a common thing to discuss and talk about when we get to that point of discussing things. So here's something, I'm gonna zoom in, oops, wrong button. I'm gonna zoom in there and I'm gonna try and eat it and something happens. So now I have to react as a predator. I have to learn, well, I'm not 100% sure I really liked eating that thing because it's done this to me. So I'll look for something else. And the idea is that kids are looking for different prey items to eat. So I'll just zoom out of here really quickly. And the idea now is, like I mentioned, the kids are having a shared experience no matter where they are. And in the classroom, this would be really, really easy because they'd be talking to each other and playing the game together and giving each other tips, which is great. But even in an online environment, what this does is it provides an opportunity, like I said, for kids anywhere to be doing similar things and then being able to talk about it through YouTube Live. So now, just like you guys are here, you can actually type in comments, you can ask questions, oh, what happened here? What happened when you ate that? And you can have a conversation with students wherever they are. And now what I think is really, really important about this is it provides an opportunity, not just in situations like we have with COVID, where everyone's in isolation, but it provides an opportunity for kids in regional and rural areas to have an experience that city kids have. And I think that's really, really important because it provides those kids with an understanding that they can do this kind of stuff too. So what I want to show you really quickly is the types of data that we actually have, that we collect. This is from another game, and that doesn't really matter, but this automatically gets collected for students as they play. So in this situation, and online, when I teach online with kids, and we have a program starting very soon, I pulled data like this up, and then we can talk about it together, no matter where students are. So I can ask them, but why do we see this difference between categories? Now, granted, this isn't going to make any sense for you right now, but you know what I'll do actually is I may actually really quickly try and pull up a different game, which is the game that we actually played, or I showed you really quickly. And so here we have a leaderboard that normally comes up, and we'll have students play games in different rounds, and they'll perform differently in different rounds. And now you can start asking students, well, why did you do really well? Why did you survive longer this time? How did you know to avoid those poisonous bugs? And the fun thing is kids from everywhere start answering, and they start communicating, they start socializing, they start having those relationships in a time where it's really difficult to do so. So this is a kind of fun way to get kids not only interacting and talking to one another, but also learning science and understanding when data is thrown at them, they can learn how to make sense of those data and better understand the world around them. So that's kind of what we do in a nutshell.
That's great.
Oh, Maddie, that brilliant. We're getting lots of reactions from people. That's cool, and someone's asking, "Are you making arludo for adults, Michael?"
Well, you know, I started this when I started teaching my kids at university, or I shouldn't say my kids, my students at university, and we use them all through second and third year classes, and then I started realizing that teachers in primary schools and high schools started using the games as well. And I realized just how widely they can be used. And then when we started this program online, we had kids join into our YouTube live shows, and parents are joining in with them, and they're playing along as well. So who was it? Vinay, yes, you know, it's pretty much available for adults right now, and it is kind of fun, and especially when you actually play along with kids as well.
Fantastic. You're getting lots of fan mail. Rob, have you got a question to ask?
I was just going to ask, with the education, how does it integrate with the education, their mainstream education?
Yeah, so it aligns directly to the curriculum in a lot of different topical ways, but what we focus most on is working scientifically. Teachers everywhere have always told me that's usually the most difficult thing for them to teach in classrooms, and it's actually the most difficult thing for me to teach in university classrooms as well, because when you do science in a class that's looking at microscopes or counting this or doing that, and inevitably it never really works out. And that's just because students, no matter their age, they're doing something new and novel, and it's hard. And it rarely gets the data that you expect because you make mistakes. So we've removed all that by automating a lot of that data collection and allowing students to behave normally like they do and learn that way. We're actually collecting that science data, and it works out every single time. And then those kids can focus on thinking critically, thinking analytically, trying to understand how their experience can explain the data. And that, I think, is the most important thing. Because if we look at society, we see how much trouble a lot of people have in understanding data. And that's what we're trying to help.
Look, I think we're probably going to have to come back for a whole program with you, because I think there's such a fan club, and maybe we need a game for optimists too, Michael.
Yeah,
I'll talk offline.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. We have one for ethics, so we could do one for optimism.
Optimism is much more important than ethics. Maddie, do you want to introduce the next portion with Lisa?
Well, I was just going to finish off and say, Michael, you know, it's fantastic that you've introduced this program, because only last year for the school curriculum, science became compulsory as part of the curriculum and competencies to be delivered. And in fact, I think we were quite far behind in delivering on scientific and digital coding across the board. So I think that your program's come at a really critical time for education for young children for their learning. So congratulations. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And
Maddie,
that's the program if anybody wants to know.
We've just got one other question already, and I'd rather than leave it to the end. Dave Hughes has asked, has the Internet of Things dampened adult curiosity or made us more creative and entrepreneurial? As a 75-year-old, I often try to see the world through a child's eyes, and this has made me more creative and optimistic. So, Mike, what's your view on that?
Well, you know, different strokes for different folks, right? You know, I think a lot of people have really embraced this. A lot of the people I talk to and in the community that I work in learning and teaching in a university, a lot of people have embraced this to make change. And it's been pretty amazing to see what people can do, not only on a hamstring budget, but so quickly. And you see how much passion a lot of people have in what they are doing when they can actually turn things around so well. So it's actually, I've been surrounded by a lot of people who've been doing some amazing things, and that's been, you know, empowering and a lot of fun.
Well, I know we've got some people online who are over 90, so the internet is not daunting to them. Maddie, hand it back to you.
I think I'd just like to finish up on the education and learning and just let you know that Lynn and I have been working with the UNSW entrepreneurs and Macquarie postgraduate students, looking at exploring how the IdeaSpies platform can be integrated into their learning. And we've also been examining the barriers to innovation in Australia in the past 10 years. So we've been looking at a lot of issues in terms of creativity, trust, social responsibility, and how we can establish a connection between the universities and businesses in partnership. So that's something that we are looking to explore further this year. And one of the other things we're looking at is chatting to museums and how we can integrate the platform into which is integral to the STEM learning in the curriculum within Australia. And, you know, our focus has been having a chat with places like Questacon. We'd like to explore the Powerhouse Museum. So if anyone's got any other great ideas in terms of who you think the IdeaSpies platform should be explored with, please do get in contact with Lynn or myself. We'd really be happy to have a chat with everyone, and you know, it fits in nicely with things like what Michael's doing as well. So thank you. I think just as something a little bit lighthearted, one of the areas on IdeaSpies is artistic, and our editor Gillian Corbin has posted 2 particular ideas that I thought were quite lovely when we've been talking about well-being and optimism and COVID. And one was just a nice little story on people going for long walks. Everyone's been going for long walks. I know myself, I've sort of got to that point where I don't think my legs can walk anymore. But, you know, keeping up with exercise and obviously for our mental health. But people have started putting up and sharing libraries in their streets. So I thought, what a lovely idea to explore different neighbourhoods, obviously close to home, but it was heartening to see that people were sharing their books within those communities. And have we got that little photo there?
What you can do is search. If you search library,
it'll pop up
at the top. Yeah.
Yeah. The next idea you'll see there. Whoops.
Yep.
Yeah. There we are, sharing books in a street library. So people have been doing some really lovely creative things, painting postbox, putting up the books. I think what a absolute fantastic way to get connected with the community, and also obviously to share your resources to upcycle. And then another one just under that, Victor, was the clever and simple activity, the little painted stone that came up. If you put in a clever,
back to artistic.
Artistic, yep, just there, perfect. This actually was designed by 2 little girls, Ali and Georgia, who decided to paint some small rocks and hide them in their street. And they sent out an email to their neighbours saying that you've been invited to do something you've never done before. We've hidden these beautiful coloured stones, and we would like you to go out and find them. So I thought it was a very simple, clever, creative idea for everyone to get outside, get exercise, and, you know, get outside with a new purpose. And I thought these little ideas are just so wonderful with connecting community, and, you know, it was very clever and simple, and didn't cost a lot, obviously, in terms of resources. So just a little feel-good factor there when we're talking about well-being and optimism. There's lots out there, and children often come up with those lovely ideas. And then just talking about the arts and culture community, which I won't dwell on too long, but it's wonderful to see that the Australian government, particularly the Victorian government, was the first to release a survival arts package recently for $16.8 million, which took a lot of effort for that package to come out. And I know I had put a post up saying, when would the New South Wales government respond? And I'm very pleased to announce that the New South Wales government has also responded with a survival package, which is absolutely fantastic. It covers artists, freelancers, you know, across theatres, and, you know, which was much needed. And I think, you know, if you look at Berlin, which is, you know, considered one of the centres for arts and culture, it took them 4 days to release these huge grants, where 500 million euros that hit people's bank accounts within 4 days. So it was good to see what was going on around the world, and that we now have recognised that the arts community is you know, essential to a civilised society, and not to be discarded. So another topic that I thought we could focus on is leadership, leading in these challenging times. And I watched a very interesting webinar with the Stevenson Mansell group. Virginia Mansell and Majul Joshi delivered a great session on how to lead others, and is that you have to lead yourself first. So I think some of the key takeaways that I think will resonate with everyone is that leaders are used to being in control and managing the future. And obviously in our times, that has all fallen by the wayside, and we've really had to ensure that leaders now have had to step up and really become problem solvers. And, you know, they've had to give clear direction. Others have done it better than others. But I think they've had to acknowledge that, you know, what the message they may have given today may change tomorrow. So leaders have had to really step up and be authentic, which I think is, you know, very important. And also leading with empathy, which is sometimes not quite natural for all leaders. And so, you know, it's been really important from people that I've spoken to across industry, is one of the messages I've been drumming down is to really check in on your team, and not just to ask, but really to show compassion both ways. I think that's highly important, and really active listening and asking questions. Yeah, so and that's been really important. And essentially also to instill a positive mindset, and that we will all get through this. Goes back to when you asked me what makes me optimistic, having a positive mindset. And, you know, that has, as someone who's been home for a long time, that has been even challenging for even someone like myself. So I think, you know, everyone should acknowledge that it's all right to have negative thoughts. And I think one of the strategies to manage that is to let yourself think about it. It's okay to think about negative thoughts for 10 minutes, but then stop and go back to the task at hand. And I think that will help you clear your mind. So I don't think there's any way to avoid it, but if you put some strategies in place, you know, it'll calm down your body and mind, so that you can go on and be productive. I think it's also essential for leaders, and Robert, you'll be able to talk about this a lot more than I, but with the different types of personality types in an organisation, communicating with your employees with the different styles is highly important at the moment. Would you like to add something on that, Robert?
Yes, well, that's very true. I think the two key things when you're referring to leadership that seems to be coming to the fore is authority and responsibility. And the latter, responsibility, is where it's now becoming much to the fore, and it's addressing, as you said earlier, leaders should be able to answer questions, but they have to acknowledge that they don't have answers for every question, and that brings into account the people with whom they work, and bring them into the equation as far as answers are concerned to some of these big questions. And so it's much more of a collegiate approach to the way leaderships are now looking at their roles, their responsibilities, but also their authority. So the trust element in all of this becomes much more to the fore. when they start to bring in a lot of other people, because that's when the trust starts to be seen, that they understand that if they engage in this way, people will have a lot greater trust in them. And the other point that you highlighted is that with their answers may change tomorrow because of different equations that are coming to the fore and different information that's coming to the fore. And that shows leadership in acknowledging that change has occurred, but admitting to it is the other big thing. And that brings trust back into the equation as well. So I'd encourage everyone now to be much more collegiate, inclusive in their approach to things, but really address the responsibility side. And that also brings in what you and Lynn and Michael were talking about, was the well-being side of people as well. So it's got a whole lot of streams to it, and leaders now need to take that into account a lot more than they have, what I'm finding, than they have ever before.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Robert. And I think, you know, one of the last things about talking about, you know, how can you take control and beat virtual exhaustion is really remembering to take breaks and constant movement. I know for myself, you know, I sit at a desk, but sometimes I actually like sitting up at the kitchen counter. It's higher, and I actually stand up and work and stretch, and it actually relaxes me more to get on with the next task at hand. So just working out different ways of working and taking breaks. I think mental breaks are very good for you. And I think we're also missing out on some of the normal social cues by, you know, having these Zoom calls. You miss the sort of side-eye glances that you give to your colleagues, and so yeah, it's a bit different. So that in itself is exhausting. You're on show the whole time. So I would say there is a lot of virtual exhaustion obviously going on at the moment. I would now like to turn to and invite to hear from Lisa. Lisa and I go way back to our early days in development and learning. Lisa and I both worked together at Allen's, one of the preeminent law firms here in Sydney. And Lisa is an expert in communication, networking, engaging in professional relationships. But Lisa today is going to talk about networking and how that's actually working during COVID, or how it may not be working. And also she has been working on a clever idea on a wellbeing project, but I'll leave it to Lisa to discuss that with you all.
Thanks,
welcome,
Maddie.
Lisa.
Thank you. And those two things are connected, and I'll explain what those connections are. But as Maddie said, yeah, I have a bit of a passion about networking, and it's something that I've been working on for many, many years. And just talking about well-being, I think there's a very strong, and I don't think anyone would disagree with me, a strong link between our relationships, our networks, and our well-being. And it was that driver that made me, along with my a colleague of mine, Martine Barclay, we decided to do some research, which I won't call it, you know, thoroughly empirical research at this point in time, but it was certainly quite a thorough survey of just to find out what people are doing, you know, now, and how it's shifted, how their networking's changed. And what's really come out of it, the upshot of it, is really a few things, is that we are networking less. So we're spending less time, you know, networking. When I say networking, I'm talking about the time we spend really building and maintaining our genuine, authentic connections with others, whether they be for business reasons or career reasons or even personal reasons. So we are spending less time networking, which makes sense because we're not out and about as much and we can't see each other face to face. But what was interesting from that is that we're not only spending less time networking, we're also reverting to some of those, what I call more staid and more efficient modes of networking. So we're now sending more emails, as a form of networking, and we're picking up the phone and making phone calls. We are obviously virtually networking a lot more than we used to, but the phone calls and emails are significantly higher than the virtual connection. So even the attempting to get some sort of face-to-face connection. So that tells me quite a lot of things. And I think as it probably tells me people are in a mode of not wanting to take too many risks. You know, let's just go with what's quick and easy or what I know will work. Maybe it's a bit of, I'm focusing too much on saving my business and doing what I need to do. I don't have time to set up virtual stuff, and I don't understand it as well. Maybe it's a bit scary to me. It's foreign, it's new, it's different. But the other thing that came out of it was we're also being less proactive in the way we network. And networking, as I said, it's about that authentic connection. It's, a lot of the things you were saying, Robert and Maddie, about empathy and honesty and vulnerability. I mean, all that stuff is so important in terms of how we connect with others when, we're networking. But we're not doing a lot of that proactive, helpful stuff for others at the moment. I think we've become a lot more reactive, and what do I need in my business and who do I need to make sure I'm keeping in contact with, rather than doing things in an authentic, genuine way that shows empathy for others. And you said, just checking in, the leadership stuff about checking in with your network. How are you? Or even going beyond that, and just saying, I've been thinking of you and wondering how this is impacting on you. I'd love to have a conversation, see, how I might be able to help, and not even business help, just any help. So that sort of thing, people were doing less of that. So we found that really, really fascinating. And I think what we thought is maybe some people are in a bit of a holding pattern. Maybe there's a bit of hibernation going on. We just hibernate the business. And none of that's good for for us personally and our well-being, and I think it does, it also shows that perhaps people are a little bit less optimistic about the value of networking at the moment, potentially. So we're making a few leaps here, and we're still going through the data, but it's certainly proving some quite interesting stuff that's coming out of it. And maybe even it just shows me that people really still don't understand what networking really is, and that they think it is about selling. And I know that there's a hesitancy at the moment to sell. And there's some research that came out from Edelman that showed that, people shouldn't be selling at the moment, that, that the trust levels will significantly decrease in you and your business and your product if you're trying to sell right now. So maybe that's what's holding people back. But see, I don't see networking as selling. I see it as entirely different. I see it as about building the relationship. So to me, I think from an optimistic view, and this comes back to what you were talking about earlier, Lynn, about opportunities as well. I think there are so many opportunities that come from this and for us at the moment. So if you think about it, if most people are reverting back to or hibernating or reverting back to the basics when it comes to networking, it really creates opportunities for those that are prepared to go out on a limb and maybe do something a bit different for their network, to connect at a more personal level, to tailor it, to do things that are perhaps beneficial to people personally rather than necessarily business related. And obviously that depends on who your network is, and, for everyone that will be different. And I think just being aware also that, if we are going to hibernate, what message that sends to our network, that, perhaps we really don't care. Maybe that relationship I had with you wasn't as genuine as I thought, if you're not even reaching out or doing, little things for me now. Maybe that, I think there's a risk if we don't do something about that. So I think certainly, all those things can have a big impact on our well-being. And I think I'm just looking for ways now to shift those levels of optimism towards networking, and for people to see the value and see that it doesn't necessarily take a lot of time, but there's little things they could be doing that could really make a big difference, not only now, but particularly in the longer term. So they're the sort of things that I've been looking at. And one of the things that's come out of that, that's fallen from that, is an idea, which Maddie mentioned, the well-being idea I have. It's really around cooking. and connecting, combining the two. And in conjunction with a good friend of mine who's a chef and runs cooking classes, we've set up a business, a side business, which is just going in 5 weeks, just doing really well. It's crazy, but it's essentially live virtual cooking classes at 1 hour. And people come, and we started doing it with some of my clients, and they come in for an hour. There's usually small groups. They get to connect, network. We've done it for groups of friends, families, and they get to cook together, and they cook their meal and they chat, sometimes with a glass of wine in hand as well. And, in an hour, they've had a chance to not only connect and chat, but they've cooked and done something together and created something and created their meal for that lunch or that evening. So that sort of stemmed from just trying to do something for my clients that was a bit different. I do have a lot of female clients who are all now often working from home, or now working from home. So it sort of fitted with, we'll do this at lunchtime when you would normally be taking a break. So that's just a heads up on sort of the sort of things I've been doing and the connections, I think, between optimism and well-being.
Thank you, Lisa.
That's all right, you're welcome.
And I think it's, really important at the moment. It's a great opportunity to stay connected with your connections. And for those that aren't, I actually can't understand why you wouldn't be. I know, like for myself this week, I started off with one of my old clients. We actually we did 2 laps of Centennial Park and actually covered all things on branding and engagement and obviously we got the wellness aspect, and then I was able to come home and continue on working in a different capacity.
That's a great example of tailoring it to the client, the person, and doing something they would enjoy, and building it in with some time. And it's not about work. Work will come up probably.
Yeah, that's right.
You're not doing it for that reason. And you can often get, add little bits of advice or connect them with someone, or, it's just thinking about doing those little things for people that'll make a big difference and make you feel good, I think, which comes back to the well-being.
Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
So goodness, time has come away from us. Now, just lastly, we wanted to focus on COVID. And I was going to talk about 2 ideas on IdeaSpies, but I'm going to run through them really quickly because I'd really like for you to hear from Bradley Delamere. But just quickly to let you know, IdeaSpies, we were very fortunate to have a catch up with David Thodey, who has been working on the National COVID Coordination Commission to coordinate advice with the Australian government on actions to mitigate the economic and social effects of the global coronavirus pandemic. And they have been working on big issues like with Qantas and Virgin and the PPP supplies out of China. So they've been addressing immediate issues, including the JobKeeper program, and their role has been to get across real issues, then coordinate with the departments looking at the response, recovery times and reforms. So I just thought I'd let you know, also David Thodey is one of the board members on IdeaSpies, which we're very fortunate to have David with us to share the latest developments in that area. And I think one of the other areas that is coming out of interest are all the transport recovery programs that are now taking place across the major cities. As we've seen with lockdown, reduction in transport use has been up to 80%, and with that has been the reduction in air pollution. So in cities, say, as London with the congestion charge, many cities now are looking at actually not having cars return to the major cities, widening the cycle paths, and to introduce people using bicycles. So that'll be an interesting development. Again, this is something that's been talked about for years. And again, when we're talking about earlier that the pandemic has actually been a disruptor, it's an accelerator for all the changes. So there is some good, again, looking at the positive when you think there's a bad situation can generate some positive outcomes. So now I'd like to introduce you to Bradley Delamere. He's someone also that I have a great relationship with. Brad and I used to work at EY together. Brad's now the CEO of Tankstream Labs, which is a community workspace for the startup community. And he also is the founder of HealthCheckYou app, which is launching. And I've got Brad here to talk about it because it's very relevant to this particular topic today. So welcome, Brad. Thanks for coming on board.
Hi, Maddie. Thank you very much, and thank you for the introduction. It's great to be involved today, and it's I've enjoyed the conversation so far from everyone. So, I'll just give you a bit of background. So, as Maddie just said, I run one of Australia's largest technology communities for startup businesses. So, working day in, day out again with very innovative entrepreneurs, trying to come up with ideas and trying to solve many problems that people and organisations are facing. And this really led me to the latest venture I've got, which is HealthCheckYou. And really, what it is, it's an idea that's been born out of really this whole COVID situation, and is myself and two other founders who came together working on very similar ideas in the wellness space, and also trying to help people with the COVID situation. So in a summary, essentially what it is, HealthCheckYou is an app for businesses to really get a pulse check or a sense check at any particular point in time on the wellness of their employees, whether that be the physical, the mental, but also with the COVID, we've added a feature in there for when businesses start reopening and people coming back to the workplace as government restrictions start lifting, then it's going to be really, really important that employees feel safe in the workplace and employers are taking a responsible approach to potential COVID risks, especially once you've got people working around each other again. So that's essentially what we're trying to do. And the feature is an app. It's questions which are asked to employees, and they complete it. And then what happens is it gives a really good visual and data insights to the employers through some analytics that we've built to understand how employees are feeling and to really take a insight into their wellness, which at the moment, if you look at all the government reports, mental health and wellness is one of the most important topics at the moment with this COVID-19 situation, and it's only going to get more progressive once we get out of this situation as well.
Maddie, can I ask a question of Brad? Because one of the questions we had from someone who sent us a question beforehand is, look, we've got all this information on well-being. We know meditation, everything that's meant to work. And yet in the state of Victoria, the Royal Commission found the level of diagnosed anxiety and depression has doubled this century in the last 17 years. And so it's not going to be any different in Sydney or Brisbane or Darwin. So what's happening, Brad? And you seem to be so ingenious in your innovation and your ability to bring people together. What do you reckon is the solution?
Look, I think the solution, and COVID has helped tremendously with this. Well, one of the positives coming out of it is actually it's just rebasing everything for people. It's actually putting things into perspective of what's important. And I think a lot of people, over the last 17 years, as you mentioned, probably longer, have lost sight of that. The world has developed a lot. What people find important really isn't that important, and I think that's one main contributor. On the other side as well, I generally think the whole rise of technology to an extent hasn't helped with social media and those type of platforms, because it's just taken away a lot of the day-to-day interaction, human physical interaction, which makes a lot of people happy, gives people energy, and that to an extent hasn't helped, and is also a contributor to why people feel anxious, people feel stressed, and especially with younger people as well, it's having a tremendous impact.
Can I just add to what Brad said, Victor?
Yeah, of course.
You raised the point about technology, Brad, and you're absolutely right, because everybody gets worried about if they get enough Facebook likes or likes and everything. It makes you feel insecure if you don't get all the likes you want. But the other really important thing about technology, I think, is in the health industry, where the technology previously has been really focusing on treatment, and with the digital, it's going to swing to prevention. And I think that will go to answering your question. We're not there yet, but it's coming, and it's coming pretty fast, particularly as Brad said with COVID.
Well, Maddie, we've hit the hour mark. I mean, it feels like 10 minutes. But look, I think if you keep going, I think, because anyone who needs to head away, they can. But would you authorize me to bring on a few of those other people onto the panel to help you with the discussion?
Most definitely.
I think we can keep going. I don't think if anyone has to head away. But I think let's keep the conversation going.
Could I just come back in again, Victor, before we wrap up, and just thank Maddie before we go on to the interview. She's been absolutely fantastic. It's such a privilege to have her as the Wellbeing editor, and she's organised all of this. I think she's absolutely wonderful. She's an inspiration, and she's very optimistic, so she fits the bill very well. Thank you,
Lynn, are you going to show us that T-shirt that's for sale?
We do. We have our shirts. Lynn and I have got our shirts. Look, I've got mine. IdeaSpies. A bit low down.
You're both great advertisements for it. So before I'll just get Rob as chairman of the Centre for Optimism also to give a thank you.
Well, yes, I'd endorse your remarks, Victor. The panel that we've had through Maddie's adjudication of it has been absolutely superb, and just I know we've only touched on a number of things, but they've been very important, I'm sure, to all the participants in it. So Maddie, thank you very much. Lynn also, and Michael and Brad and Lisa. I found it a very informative hour. As Victor said, it only sounded like 5 minutes, or felt like 5 minutes. So thank you very much to everyone.
So I think, Maddie, we're going to book you up to do another one of these very soon. But I think let's keep talking. So Brad, I think, was on some really interesting points, and we'll just bring a few more people on board as we go.
I think actually I had a question for Brad, if you've got time, Brad, is just to, there's a good story behind how this app came to be. Can you give us a little insight into that?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mentioned earlier, I've got another two founders on this, and it came about by one of us was identified an issue and was solving an issue for the physical wellness of employees in a workplace, as they worked in a very manual intensive organisation. Another friend of mine was starting a business addressing COVID-19 symptoms, and myself was looking at this from a mental health perspective, because I was really looking at trying to help a lot of the entrepreneurs that I work with mental health problems, because I've seen it firsthand on a regular basis with entrepreneurs who commit their life and soul to an idea or a project, put their life savings behind it, and as soon as COVID hit, a lot of those businesses struggled, and also people who worked for them as well lost their jobs, and people also struggled working remotely, which was suddenly thrust upon a lot of people. So I saw straight away a lot of issues coming through, and so was working closely on an idea and products for helping businesses keep on top and monitor the mental health of their employees. So we all came together. We each had different elements, and we thought, well, let's address all of those areas, from physical to mental to also COVID, which will be very prevalent as people start returning back to the workplace.
Well, after that, another half an hour of deep conversation, questions and answers followed. And we hope you enjoyed this broadcast. please think about joining IdeaSpies and becoming an IdeaSpy yourself. And you're welcome to become involved with the Centre for Optimism. Again, our website is centreforoptimism.com. We wish you a splendid day.